They laughed at her for having only one arm, then froze when she broke the sniper range record. The cold, skeptical whispers echoed through the crowded sniper range as soldiers snickered at the sight of Cora, a young woman with only one arm, quietly setting up her rifle. They saw weakness, a joke, a figure unworthy of the challenge. What they didn't know was that Cora carried the legacy of an elite sniper unit, trained in silence and shadow, forged by loss and unbreakable will. Behind the calm in her eyes lay years of sacrifice, discipline, and a history written in scars. When the competition began, those mocking her would freeze in stunned disbelief as her shots shattered every record, each bullet a quiet reclaiming of respect. This was not just a victory of skill. It was the unveiling of a silent strength that would redefine everything the base thought it knew about resilience, courage, and the true meaning of a warrior. The dry wind scraped across the open desert range like sandpaper on silence. Rows of soldiers in camouflage stood beside a long table of rifles, scopes glinting under the morning sun. The base commander's voice echoed through the briefing, sharp and precise, but the murmurs underneath had a different tone, quieter, meaner. She stood slightly apart from the others, her right sleeve empty and pinned neatly at the shoulder. No patches, no fanfare, just standard-issue fatigues, tin boots, and a calm face framed by a dark bun tucked under her cap. Her name tag read Cora. To the others, she looked out of place. Too young, too thin, and missing an arm. Whispers followed her like dust trails. She's just here for show. Some kind of PR stunt. But she can't even load a mag. Cora didn't respond. She rarely did. The range supervisor, a tall, stocky sergeant with a toothpick in his mouth and the casual arrogance of someone who thought he'd seen it all, glanced her way and smirked. "Don't worry, sweetheart," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We got a Nerf gun in the truck if the real ones are too heavy." Laughter rolled out across the line. Cora blinked once, then walked forward. Her prosthetic, matte black with worn edges and a single engraved trident on the inside wrist, caught the light. She moved with purpose, wordless, her footsteps silent on the gravel. Her left hand reached for the custom bolt-action rifle slotted neatly at the end of the table, the one she brought herself. It was older than most of the others. Worn, but well-maintained. Its wooden body was stained deep brown, its barrel long, balanced, and clearly modified. The initials RM were etched near the trigger guard, almost invisible. No one asked what they meant. Cora knelt down at the furthest mat without a word. She didn't glance at anyone, didn't smirk, didn't correct. She just laid down, set her gear, and adjusted her sling, single point, with a rhythm that said this isn't new. A few soldiers stopped chuckling. The sergeant just scoffed. "She's just posing. Watch." They would. They all would. The sound of her last shot still echoed in their heads long after she'd stepped off the line. Nobody laughed now. Cora sat on a low wooden bench beside the range, carefully unloading her rifle. Each movement was exact, reverent. Her fingers ran briefly across the initials etched near the trigger, RM, before she tucked the weapon into its canvas case. Behind her, quiet conversation stirred, not mockery this time, but questions. Did she say Fallujah? She was there. But she's, what, 25? That means she enlisted young. Real young. No one asked her directly. Daniels lingered nearby, arms crossed. His posture was looser now, his voice more hesitant. "You, active duty?" Cora zipped the case shut. Was. A pause. Then, softly, recon attachments. Ghost teams. Daniels squinted. "That's off-book." Cora looked at him for the first time, not with challenge, but something older. Worn. Tired. "It was," she said simply. He didn't press further. As the others cycled through their turns, the sun climbed higher. Cora remained seated, elbows on her knees, silent. Occasionally, she glanced at the horizon, not watching, exactly. Remembering. Flashback. She's younger. Full kit. Sand swirling around a tan helmet. In a crumbling window frame somewhere overseas, the same rifle balanced on a dusty sill. A voice crackles in her earpiece. "Blue 1, winds changing, adjust south by 4. Confirm." Cora responds. "Confirmed. Ready." Then the shot, distant, heavy. Silence after. Back in the present, her fingers hover over a weathered pendant around her neck, a silver dog tag, scuffed and dull. She presses it between her thumb and prosthetic, the motion habitual. Daniels, now quieter, sits beside her. I didn't know, he mutters. She doesn't answer. He tries again. What happened? The arm. Cora's voice is calm, flat. IED. Ramadi. Third vehicle in convoy. No cover. No one made it. Daniel's mouth tightens. I'm sorry, he says, and for once he means it. Cora nods once. Not out of forgiveness, just acknowledgement. Then the PA system buzzes overhead. Range reconfiguration begins in 20. All shooters report to staging area. She stands, slings her case over her shoulder. Daniels watches her go. The laughter from earlier buried deep under the dust she leaves behind. The staging area was nothing more than a shaded canvas awning stretched over folding tables and crates of ammo. Soldiers milled about, cleaning weapons, swapping stories, checking optics. Their earlier bravado softened into curiosity. Cora arrived quietly, carrying her rifle case and a compact rucksack. No one called her over, but heads turned. The young corporal who'd been watching through the rangefinder earlier approached her. His voice was tentative. Ma'am, I've never seen a one-arm draw like that. That sling setup, custom. She nodded. Modified rig. Rear-mounted pivot. Freeze-up rotation. The corporal blinked. Who taught you that? Cora unzipped the rucksack and pulled out a neatly folded cloth, a faded patch sewn to it. It bore the insignia of a now disbanded elite sniper unit. She didn't answer his question, but the corporal's eyes widened. He stepped back, whispering to another soldier. She's from Black Dagger. That name carried weight. A ghost team, part rumor, part legend, whispered about in late-night briefings. Operatives who shot from impossible distances, moved without satellite trace, left no heat signatures. Most thought it was just a myth. Until now. Daniels appeared behind them, tone now respectful, if cautious. They're setting up the 1,000-meter challenge, he said. No one's hit that one since it opened last month. Cora didn't reply. She simply reached into her rucksack and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. On its front, etched in a careful hand. For RM, keep them honest. She flipped it open to a page of calculations. Range tables. Wind formulas. Zeroing notes. Not printed. Written. Annotated. Cross-referenced. Daniels asked, almost reverently. Who was RM? She didn't look up. Just traced the page once with her finger. My spotter. The air shifted again. No longer skeptical. Now it was reverent. Someone brought her a fresh mag. Someone else quietly asked if they could observe when she took the 1,000-meter shot. Cora nodded once. And just like that, without raising her voice, without demanding space, the very same crowd that mocked her now waited for her to speak, to act, to teach. She rolled her sleeve up slightly to adjust the sling. A scar peeked out from her shoulder, jagged, raw, unfinished. A wound earned. No one asked about it. They just waited. The sun climbed relentlessly higher, beating down on the dusty sniper range as the soldiers arranged themselves under the worn canvas awning. The 1,000-meter line was daunting, a cruel stretch of barren earth that tested even the most seasoned marksman. Steel targets stood at the far end, appearing as little more than pinpricks against the shimmering heat waves rising from the desert floor. Cora settled onto her mat, the familiar weight of her rifle comforting in her hands. Her prosthetic arm locked the weapon in place with practiced steadiness, a precision tool fused to muscle memory. The world around her seemed to fade, narrowed down to the gentle movement of the wind flags fluttering a few feet away. She exhaled, slow and deliberate, synchronizing her breath with the subtle rise and fall of the scope's viewfinder as the desert heat twisted the landscape beyond recognition. 3 degrees of wind drift to the left, a steady correction she'd accounted for 1,000 times before. Her fingers brushed a small, faded compass tattoo on her wrist, a private reminder, a ritual of calm and control. Time slowed. 5 rounds. 5 chances to prove something beyond words. The first shot cracked sharply, the echo rolling off distant hills. The target flickered, a near miss, just shy of the bullseye. A murmur spread quietly among the watching soldiers. Second shot. The bullet struck closer, the impact nudging the crowd's disbelief further down. Third shot, dead center. Silence fell like a blanket. The fourth round landed a bit low, a minor imperfection in an otherwise flawless sequence. Fifth and final shot, A perfect bullseye again. Crisp. Precise. Sergeant Daniels lowered his binoculars, jaw tightening in rare and unmistakable respect. Around him, the gathered soldiers shifted, faces somber and reflective, the laughter and jeers from earlier now swallowed by a new understanding. An older veteran, voice low and reverent, muttered, "I haven't seen scores like that since Nam." For a brief moment, the harsh desert sun seemed to dim, folding time over itself, the past and present converging in that small, quiet victory. Cora rose deliberately, expression calm but eyes shining with restrained triumph. No cheers, no applause, only the deep, unspoken acknowledgement of a silent warrior reclaimed. She packed her rifle with meticulous care, her prosthetic steady and sure. As she glanced once more toward the distant target, the crowd remained hushed, their respect spoken without words. The crowd's silence was more telling than any applause could have been. No cheers, no whistles, no claps, just a heavy, reverent quiet that settled over the range like desert dust after a storm. It carried the weight of unspoken respect, grudging acknowledgement, and the fragile recognition of something extraordinary. Cora lowered herself onto the worn wooden bench at the edge of the range. Her rifle case was closed and leaned against her boot, the muted clinks of its clasps the only sound breaking the stillness. Her breathing was steady, calm, but inside, each inhale carried the ghosts of past battles and losses. Her eyes fixed on the horizon where the distant targets still stood, silent, small, yet somehow conquered. Sergeant Daniels approached cautiously, the familiar swagger that had marked him earlier softened now into something hesitant, almost reverent. His voice was low, careful, as if testing the waters. "You got a name, sniper?" he asked, eyes meeting hers squarely. Cora met his gaze with steady eyes and quiet dignity. "Cora. Just Cora." He nodded slowly, respect evident in his posture. "You're different. Not just the arm, or the record you set out there." Her lips twitched in the faintest of nods. She reached up, fingers tracing the compass tattoo etched on her wrist, a private symbol that held more weight than any medal. "The way you handled that rifle, like it's part of you, like it's an extension of yourself." A young private standing nearby, the one who had been among the most skeptical earlier, swallowed nervously and found his voice. "Ma'am, how do you do it? How do you keep so calm, so precise?" Cora's smile was subtle, almost imperceptible but genuine. "Focus," she said simply. "Discipline, and remembering why it matters." The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the barren range. The soldiers quietly dispersed, leaving Cora alone with her thoughts and memories. She slipped the silver dog tag from beneath her shirt and held it gently between her thumb and black prosthetic hand. The initials, RM, glinted faintly in the fading light, a silent tribute. "Not just for me," she whispered under her breath. Her gaze lifted to the sky, steady, unyielding. A quiet warrior, once dismissed, now reclaiming her place with every measured breath. The days that followed Cora's silent victory slipped by in a blur of routine and quiet endurance. News of her feat, the flawless shots at an impossible distance, spread faster than the desert wind, weaving through the base like an undercurrent. Yet, to the world, she remained unchanged. No grand announcements, no parades or medals handed out. Just the steady cadence of a soldier who moved through her days with purpose but without fanfare. She kept to herself, cleaning her rifle with the same meticulous care as always, running silent drills on the outskirts of the base, and retreating into corners where no one sought to engage. The weight of her past, of loss and survival, anchored her in a way that kept her grounded. Recognition was never what she sought, only discipline and the quiet honor of doing what needed to be done. One warm afternoon, as the sun poured golden light over the base's dusty walkways, Cora sat alone near the mess hall. The hum of distant conversations and clinking cutlery surrounded her, but she remained still, a figure of calm amidst the chaos. An older veteran approached, his weathered face creased with years of hard-fought battles and quiet wisdom. His eyes, sharp yet kind, settled on her with a knowing look. "You remind me of someone I once knew," he said softly, his voice a gravelly whisper against the din quiet. Steady, deadly. Cora's gaze met his, steady and unreadable. She said nothing. He continued. They called him the ghost. Moved like a shadow, always one step ahead. Lost his arm back in '92, but never missed a shot. For a flicker of a moment, Cora's eyes betrayed something. Memory, pride, pain. But she kept silent. The veteran reached into his pocket and produced a folded, faded photograph. It showed a younger soldier, rifle in hand, missing his right arm. The lines of time had softened the edges, but the image was unmistakable. "You carry his legacy," the veteran said, voice low but resolute. "Don't ever let it go." Cora took the photo carefully, folding it inside her jacket. She looked up, holding his gaze firmly. No words passed between them. They didn't need to. Later that evening, in the quiet solitude of her room, she traced the edges of the photograph. The weight of history and the promise of the future settled in her chest like a slow, steady flame. Outside, the sun dipped beneath the horizon, spilling oranges and violets across the sky. And within her, a quiet strength took hold, an unspoken vow to carry on, not for glory or applause, but for honor and remembrance. The night brought a cool, quiet hush over the base. Inside her small, Spartan room, Cora sat by the window, the pale glow of a desk lamp casting soft shadows across the cracked walls. The faded photograph lay on the worn wooden table before her, a silent testament to the man who once carried the name RM and the legacy she now bore. Her fingers traced the frayed edges of the photo with a tenderness reserved for ghosts. Outside, the distant hum of generators mingled with muffled voices drifting through the hallways, but all of it felt far away, swallowed by the weight of memories she rarely voiced aloud. Her mind slipped back to a desert night long ago. Dust swirled around her, biting into every exposed inch of skin. Through the static in her earpiece, a calm, measured voice broke through the chaos. "Blue one, adjust your wind hold. Target moving left." "Confirm." "Confirmed," she had replied, her voice steady, unshaken despite the explosion looming just moments away. A faint muzzle flash illuminated her face, a brief moment of resolve frozen in time. Then came the blast. The convoy struck an IED, erupting in flames and confusion, screams cutting through the night. Her world shattered. Her arm was lost, but her resolve remained unbroken. She gently touched the compass tattoo etched on her wrist, a mark she had earned, a map guiding her back to herself. A soft knock pulled her from the memory. Sergeant Daniels stepped inside, holding a steaming cup of coffee. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "Thought you might need this." She accepted the cup without looking up, nodding in quiet thanks. "Never figured you for the quiet type," Daniels said, breaking the silence. She finally met his eyes. "You don't learn that from being loud." He smiled, a genuine, rare expression. "Guess there's more to you than meets the eye." She said nothing, letting the silence between them say what words could not. Outside, the desert stars blinked cold and distant. Inside, Cora remained steady, a soldier shaped by loss, driven by purpose, moving forward one measured breath at a time. Days folded into nights, each one blending into the next with the same steady cadence of the base's daily rhythm. Drills echoed across the open desert. Maintenance crews moved with practiced efficiency, and whispered stories about the sniper who defied expectations rippled quietly among the soldiers. But through it all, Cora remained distant, a lone figure carrying a quiet storm beneath a calm, composed exterior. Her scars, both visible and invisible, told a story far deeper than anyone dared to guess. The jagged line across her left shoulder peeked from beneath her uniform sleeve, a stark reminder of that fateful day in Ramadi when everything changed. But beneath the surface, deeper wounds remained, trust shattered by betrayal, comrades lost in silence, and secrets held tight in the shadows of her mind. One late afternoon, as soldiers gathered for gear checks and weapons maintenance, a fellow soldier's gaze caught a glimpse of a faded tattoo just above her collarbone. It was subtle, a small phoenix rising from ashes, inked with delicate strokes that spoke of resilience and rebirth. "Why the phoenix?" the soldier asked softly, voice tinged with curiosity and respect. Cora's eyes flickered with something close to a smile, a rare crack in her otherwise stoic demeanor. "Because sometimes," she said quietly, "you have to burn completely before you can learn to fly again." The soldier nodded, understanding the unspoken weight behind her words. Later, as the sun dipped low behind the distant hills, Cora stood alone at the edge of the sniper range. Her black prosthetic arm rested lightly against the worn rifle case, fingers tracing its surface with a slow, steady rhythm. The desert wind tugged at her hair, carrying distant echoes of shouted orders and sharp gunfire. She closed her eyes briefly, inhaling the dry, sharp air. Memories flooded in, faces of fallen friends, promises made in silence, and the unbreakable vow to keep moving forward. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "Cora." She turned, surprised to find Daniels approaching, his tone softer now, free of earlier skepticism. "You're not as invisible as you think," he said quietly. For the first time, Cora allowed herself a small nod, a subtle but powerful acknowledgement. In that moment, the line between soldier and survivor blurred, binding them in a quiet understanding of the battles fought both outside and within. The news of Cora's record-breaking sniper shot had traveled beyond the dusty borders of her base, weaving its way through channels that rarely paid attention to quiet heroes. An official invitation arrived, crisp and formal, calling her to compete in the upcoming inter-base marksmanship competition. It was a challenge cloaked in expectation, a test of skill, nerve, and reputation. The stakes were high, the crowd larger, and the eyes more critical. Cora prepared with her usual quiet discipline. No grand declarations or promises accompanied her practice sessions, just the steady rhythm of loading, aiming, and firing beneath the harsh sun. Her prosthetic arm, once a symbol of limitation, moved with mechanical precision, an extension of her unyielding resolve. The day of the competition dawned hot and clear. Soldiers from multiple units gathered around the expansive range, their expressions a mix of skepticism, curiosity, and respect. Whispers floated on the dry air. "That's the one-armed sniper, right? Do you really think she can pull it off again? Must have been luck last time." Cora didn't flinch or respond. She adjusted her sling, settled prone, and closed her eyes for a moment, sinking breath with heartbeat. The targets stretched further than she had faced before, a challenge worthy of the silent strength she carried. The first shot rang out sharp and true, a crack that cut through the tension. Round after round followed, each finding its mark with unerring accuracy. The murmurs of doubt faded, replaced by a charged hush. When the final shot echoed across the range, the scoreboard blinked to life, confirming the impossible. A perfect score, a new record, untouched, unbroken. For a moment, the range was silent, the weight of what she had done sinking in. Then, a single, slow clap broke the quiet. A veteran judge stepping forward, his respect clear in the steady applause. Cora rose smoothly, her face calm but resolute. She met the judge's eyes and gave a slight nod, a silent exchange of acknowledgement between warriors. No cheers, no fanfare, just the quiet dignity of a soldier reclaimed. The aftermath of the inter-base competition settled over the base like a slow, shifting tide. There were no grand announcements, no parades or celebrations. Instead, the reverberations were subtle, nuanced, a recalibration of respect among those who had once doubted her. Cora moved through the daily routines with the same quiet discipline that had carried her through countless challenges. Her footsteps were steady, her gaze calm, but something had shifted beneath the surface. The way soldiers looked at her changed. Where once there had been skeptical glances and whispered dismissals, now came nods of recognition and respect in passing. One early morning, as the sun cast long fingers of light across the training grounds, Sergeant Daniels approached her quietly. In his hand was a folded piece of paper, an official commendation. "Thought you might want this," he said simply, offering the slip with an earnest look. Cora accepted it without a word, her fingers brushing the worn edges before slipping it inside her jacket pocket. "You earned every bit of it," Daniels added, his voice steady but sincere. For the first time in a long while, a rare and fleeting smile touched Cora's lips, a soft acknowledgement of the path she'd walked, the battles won within and without. Later that day, during evening drills, the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the range. Cora stood silently, watching the younger recruits struggle to steady their aim, their faces tight with frustration and determination. She remembered those early days, The endless hours spent perfecting her skill, the patient repetition of breath control, sight alignment, trigger discipline. The discipline that turned nerves into precision. One recruit faltered, the rifle slipping slightly from their grip. The frustration was clear in their eyes, the tension thick in the air. Without hesitation, Cora stepped forward, her movements deliberate and calm. She reached out, adjusting the recruit's grip on the rifle with practiced ease. Her black prosthetic arm moved gently, steadying and guiding. "Steady your breathing," she advised softly, her voice low and steady. "Control your heartbeat. Let the rifle move with you, not against you." The recruit nodded, the tension easing as the weight of her presence settled like a balm. The eyes that met hers reflected new determination, a spark ignited. Cora stepped back without a word, leaving behind a silent lesson, an unspoken gift of mentorship. Her past, shaped by loss, betrayal, and sacrifice, remained wrapped in shadows. Yet in that moment, her presence was a beacon, a quiet storm of resilience and mastery lighting the way for those who would come after. The base hummed with a new energy following the marksmanship competition. The walls whispered of a soldier who had defied expectations and shattered silent doubts. Those who once regarded Cora with skepticism now sought her counsel, their gazes softer, their questions quieter. Yet Cora remained reserved, her story still carefully guarded, like a fragile ember hidden beneath ash. One early morning, as the sun filtered gently through the blinds of her quarters, a sharp knock interrupted her solitary routine. Lieutenant Harris, a young intelligence officer with sharp eyes and cautious demeanor, stepped inside. His posture was respectful, but his presence carried an undeniable urgency. "I've been reviewing some files," he began, voice steady but careful. "There's more to you than what's been said." Cora met his gaze, steady and unreadable, the years of silence behind her eyes holding 1,000 untold stories. He unfolded a confidential document, a classified briefing from years before. The faded text detailed names, locations, and covert missions executed in shadows. The heading caught her attention immediately: Blackthorn. "You were part of Blackthorn," Lieutenant Harris said quietly, his voice lowering as if the walls themselves might listen. "An elite sniper unit. The ones they said disappeared after that raid." Cora's eyes flicked away briefly, lips pressing tight in silent acknowledgement. The weight of ghosts filled the room, thick and heavy. "I don't talk about it," she said simply, her voice calm but firm, a boundary drawn in the quiet. Lieutenant Harris nodded, understanding the unspoken burden she carried. "I get it, but your skills saved lives, more than anyone here realizes." For the first time in a long while, a faint, almost imperceptible smile softened Cora's features. It was a brief crack in her stoic armor, a reminder that even the quietest soldiers carry the heaviest histories. "We need someone like you," Lieutenant Harris said, voice low but resolute. "Quiet, precise, relentless. Someone who understands what it means to move unseen but strike true." Outside the window, the sun continued to rise, casting long, shifting shadows across the room. In that quiet light, Cora's past was no longer just a secret hidden away. It had become a shield she wielded with silent strength and a purpose renewed. She folded her hands over the table, meeting Harris's eyes. No words were needed. The alliance was forged, invisible but unbreakable. The days following Lieutenant Harris's visit marked a subtle shift in Cora's world, a quiet awakening within the steady rhythm of military life. The weight of her past, once a solitary burden cloaked in silence and shadows, had begun to transform. No longer merely a ghost haunting her memories, it now stood as a shared mission, a silent pact between her and those who recognized the depth of her experience. Her daily routine adjusted accordingly. Beyond the familiar drills and long hours of marksmanship practice, Cora began collaborating with intelligence officers, offering insights born from years navigating the margins of conflict. Her knowledge of terrain, tactics, and the unseen dangers that lurk in shadows became a beacon for planning and preparation. In briefings, her words were few but precise, each carefully measured statement carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. Yet, despite this new role, the shadows of betrayal and loss lingered in the corners of her mind, unyielding. Memories of fallen comrades, whispered secrets fractured by broken trust, and the sharp sting of isolation and the chaos of war remained ever-present companions. They haunted her in quiet moments, fueling her resolve even as they tested her resilience. One evening, in the dim light of the command center, Cora sat alone at a table strewn with maps and tactical charts. Her black prosthetic arm rested beside her as she traced familiar routes with a steady finger, paths only those who had lived on the edge between life and death could know. The soft hum of monitors and the faint rustle of papers filled the room. Sergeant Daniels appeared quietly at her side, his presence calm but attentive. He watched her tracing the lines before finally speaking in a low voice. "You ever think about going back?" he asked gently, eyes searching hers. Cora didn't look up immediately, her gaze fixed on the maps. "Every day," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniels nodded, a deep respect settling into his features. "You're not alone in that," he said softly. A brief silence passed between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. "Maybe it's time to stop running," Daniels added, his words lingering in the air like a challenge and an invitation. Slowly, Cora lifted her eyes to meet his, the flicker of old pain mingling with new resolve. The path ahead was uncertain, marked by scars and secrets, but she was no longer walking it in solitude or silence. The road forward was hers to reclaim. The morning sun filtered softly through the base's windows, casting long, pale beams across the floor of the small briefing room. It was modest, the kind of place that bore the faint scent of worn uniforms and old coffee, functional but unadorned. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle, filled with a mix of young recruits and junior officers, all drawn by the whispers and rumors of the sniper who had quietly rewritten what they thought possible. Cora stood at the front of the room, the weight of her presence both understated and commanding. Her black prosthetic arm rested lightly at her side, a quiet symbol of battles fought and survived. There was no grand entrance, no dramatic proclamation, just a soldier ready to speak her truth in a way only she could. She began not with tales of valor or wounds, but with something more profound: discipline, resilience, and the silent strength that fuels those who refuse to be broken. "Strength isn't about what you lose," she said, her voice low but steady, carrying the gravity of experience. "It's about how you choose to move forward. Every scar, visible or hidden, is a story. Every setback is a lesson carved into the soul. You don't have to be perfect. You only have to be determined." Her words settled over the room like a quiet storm, stirring something deep in those listening. Some faces reflected curiosity, others skepticism, and a few showed the flicker of hope that comes from hearing a truth rarely spoken aloud. After the session, as the room emptied, a young female recruit lingered, hesitating before stepping forward. Her hands trembled slightly, eyes searching for answers. "Ma'am," she said softly, voice barely above a whisper, "how do you keep going when everything feels lost?" Cora's gaze met hers, steady, unwavering. "Because giving up never felt like an option," she replied simply, her tone carrying a weight beyond words. The recruit nodded slowly, the weight of Cora's resilience settling in her heart like a seed of strength. That day, Cora shattered the silence that had held her captive for so long, not with noise or spectacle, but with the quiet power of presence. She became a living testament to resilience, a beacon for those who walked through their own shadows, learning that strength often lies not in what is visible, but in what endures silently. As the days grew shorter and the desert sun dipped earlier behind distant ridges, a quiet fire burned steadily within the walls of the base. Cora's presence, once whispered about in passing and met with doubt, had transformed into a steady beacon of resilience, unyielding strength, and silent leadership. One warm afternoon, as the golden light poured over the dusty grounds, an elderly man arrived, a retired veteran whose leather jacket bore the faded insignia of battles long past. His gait was slow, measured, but his eyes held a sharpness that cut through the noise of everyday life. There was an unmistakable weight in his step, the kind that comes from years of hard-earned experience and memories etched deep. He sought out Cora with purpose. When he finally stood before her, his voice was rough yet sincere, carrying the timbre of someone who had known loss and honor. "I heard about you," he said quietly, nodding toward the half-prosthetic soldier standing tall. Back when I served, women like you were called ghosts. Silent, deadly, impossible to forget. Cora met his gaze steadily, feeling the unspoken history bridging the gap between them. She sensed that beneath his weathered exterior was a man who understood the burdens and sacrifices she carried, those that few ever saw or acknowledged. The veteran reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a faded dog tag, the metal worn thin by years of touch and time. He held it out to her with reverence. This belonged to my daughter, he said softly, voice thick with emotion. She lost her arm during a mission years ago, but she never lost her aim or her spirit. She'd be proud to see you carrying that legacy forward. Cora took the dog tag carefully, her fingers brushing the cold, worn metal as if feeling the echoes of a story that transcended her own. The room seemed to still, the weight of shared sacrifice hanging in the air. Thank you, she replied quietly, voice steady but touched with gratitude. The veteran smiled then, a rare softness breaking through the lines of his hardened face. Keep fighting, he urged. Keep leading. The legacy lives on through those who endure, who stand when others fall. As he turned and walked away, Cora held the dog tag close to her chest, a rekindled connection igniting within her, a lineage of silent warriors who bore their scars with dignity and courage. Her journey was far from over, but in that quiet, sunlit moment, past and future converged in a solemn affirmation of strength, honor, and the enduring power of legacy. In the days following her meeting with the elderly veteran, Cora moved through the base with a renewed quiet confidence that seemed to ripple subtly through the ranks. The faded dog tag she had received from the veteran was tucked securely beneath her uniform, resting close to her heart, a tangible reminder of the legacy she carried and the solemn path she had chosen to walk. Her training sessions intensified, but not in haste or desperation. Each movement, each breath was purposeful and deliberate, reflecting the disciplined calm of a warrior who had weathered storms far fiercer than the one approaching. Every shot fired was a lesson in precision, every stance an affirmation of control and focus. At the range, the atmosphere had transformed. Where once whispers of skepticism had floated in the air, now there was a respectful silence. Fellow soldiers no longer exchanged doubtful glances, but offered quiet nods of acknowledgement. Even Daniels, who had stood at the periphery of her journey from the beginning, now met her gaze with a subtle but meaningful nod, an unspoken sign of approval and understanding. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the vast desert sky with strokes of orange, purple, and deepening blue, Cora stood alone at the far end of the sniper range. Her black prosthetic arm rested steady on the rifle case beside her, fingers tracing the familiar contours of the weapon she had come to trust as an extension of herself. Her eyes scanned the distant steel targets, small, cold, and challenging, each one a test of skill and patience. The wind played softly with strands of her hair, yet she remained unmoved, rooted by years of relentless training and quiet resolve. The world seemed to hold its breath, the calm before the storm that was to come. Suddenly, the sharp crack of a rifle shot pierced the stillness, followed by another. A reminder that the inter-base competition was fast approaching, bringing with it a wave of expectation, pressure, and scrutiny. But Cora was ready, not just to face the challenge, but to redefine what strength truly meant, to show that resilience, precision, and quiet dignity could speak louder than any doubt or dismissal. In that moment, beneath the expansive desert sky, she stood as a testament to the power of presence, calm, controlled, and unwavering. The day of the inter-base competition dawned crisp and clear, the vast sky stretching wide and uninterrupted above the assembled crowd. The firing line was alive with a mix of seasoned marksmen, eager newcomers, and curious spectators, all eyes quietly fixed on the woman who had already begun to rewrite the boundaries of what was thought possible. Cora stood at the line, calm and composed. Her black prosthetic arm moved with mechanical precision as she meticulously prepared her rifle. Every motion, from the careful chambering of a round to the final check of the scope, reflected countless hours of disciplined training and the quiet strength forged through years of endurance. Around her, whispered conversations flickered like a fragile wind. Can she really do it again? one soldier murmured. After everything, I'm starting to believe, another replied softly. But Cora didn't hear them. Her focus was absolute. Her gaze locked unwaveringly on the distant steel targets that awaited their reckoning. The command was given. Silence fell over the range, the tension thick enough to taste. Then, with a sudden crack that shattered the stillness, her first shot rang out, clean, sharp, and unerringly true. A subtle shift swept through the crowd, like a wave rippling across still waters. Each round that followed was a measured statement of precision and control, a symphony of discipline that seemed to echo beyond the range. Her breathing was steady, her movements fluid, every shot landing with unerring accuracy. As the final bullet struck its mark, the crowd held its breath in stunned silence. The scoreboard flickered, confirming what many refused to believe, a flawless, record-breaking performance. The numbers glowed like a quiet testament to perseverance and skill, a new pinnacle that challenged all preconceived notions. From the sidelines, the veteran judge stepped forward with slow, deliberate steps. His face, lined with decades of experience, softened into a rare expression of respect. "Well done," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken acknowledgement. Cora's eyes met his, her expression calm and resolute. She offered a simple nod in return. No words were needed. Her victory was not a loud celebration, but a quiet reclaiming of dignity, honor, and the truth of her own strength. The crowd remained silent for a moment longer, the gravity of what had transpired settling over them like a profound truth unveiled. In that solemn silence, Cora stood, no longer the underestimated one-armed soldier, but a master marksman whose presence commanded respect without uttering a single boast. The interbase competition had come to a close, but the reverberations of Cora's victory lingered far longer than the final rounds. The crowd dispersed slowly, their usual chatter muted, replaced by a respectful hush. Where once there had been whispers of doubt and skepticism, now there was an unmistakable aura of admiration and even awe. Soldiers who had doubted her now wore looks of respect, some pausing as if to reconsider all they thought they knew about strength, resilience, and the human spirit. Cora remained behind at the range, seated alone on the low bench near the firing line. Her rifle rested gently across her knees, the metal cool under her hands. The sun had dipped low in the sky, its fading light casting long, soft shadows across the ground, shadows that seemed to mirror the quiet weight she carried deep within. Her black prosthetic arm rested with ease on the rifle, a symbol of battles fought and endurance earned. The range was mostly empty now, save for the occasional soldier gathering their gear or exchanging subdued words with comrades. The energy of competition had settled into something more profound, a shared recognition of what had been witnessed. Sergeant Daniels approached quietly, his steps measured and respectful. There was a softness in his expression, a rare smile that didn't need to be spoken aloud to convey its sincerity. "You did more than just win today," he said gently, his voice low enough to blend with the evening breeze. "You changed how we see strength." Cora lifted her gaze, meeting his with steady eyes. A faint, almost imperceptible smile broke through her usual stoic calm. It was a small, personal victory, not one announced with fanfare or ceremony, but deeply felt. Neither spoke further, the silence between them carrying more meaning than words ever could. In that quiet understanding, a chapter closed, not with noise, but with the dignity and honor that had defined her journey from the very beginning. The sun slipped below the horizon, leaving behind a sky painted with soft hues of pink and purple. The day's trials and triumphs folded into the gathering dusk, a gentle reminder that true strength often resides in the silent moments between action. Cora rose slowly, shouldering her rifle and adjusting her jacket. With a final nod to Daniels, she stepped away from the range, her silhouette steady and sure against the fading light. Days had passed since the interbase competition, but the ripple effect of Cora's achievement continued to grow, spreading quietly yet profoundly beyond the confines of the firing range. The story of the one-armed sniper who shattered records and expectations traveled through the base like a whispered legend. It found its way into the mess hall, the barracks, and the training grounds. Conversations that once carried skepticism now carried respect and curiosity. At the mess hall, soldiers who had once cast doubtful glances in her direction now spoke her name with a mixture of reverence and awe. The same recruits who had avoided eye contact began to seek her out, hoping for a word, a tip, or simply the chance to stand near someone who embodied resilience. Cora's presence, once overlooked, was slowly becoming a steady beacon of strength. Invitations to share her knowledge arrived in small, meaningful ways. A request from a junior officer to observe her shooting technique, a call from a training coordinator to offer advice during drills, a soldier asking quietly if she might help improve their aim. One afternoon, while moving through a quiet hallway bathed in soft natural light filtering from small windows high above, Cora found herself approached by a young lieutenant. His demeanor was respectful but hesitant, eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and uncertainty. "Ma'am," he said softly, voice barely above the quiet hum of the bass. "Your precision at the range, it's inspiring. I was wondering if you might help me improve my marksmanship." Cora regarded him for a long moment, her gaze steady and thoughtful. She recognized the earnestness in his eyes, the same kind of determination that had carried her through the darkest moments of her own journey. Without a word, she gave a slight nod, a subtle acknowledgement that spoke volumes. From that moment on, word spread quietly through the base. Cora's presence became more than just a story of victory. It became a steady source of mentorship and quiet leadership. She moved through the halls with a measured grace, offering guidance not through grand speeches, but through example and gentle instruction. The woman who had once been laughed at for having only one arm had become an unseen pillar for many, a symbol of resilience and strength that transcended physical limitations. Her story was no longer just hers to bear. It had become a living testament to the power of perseverance, quiet dignity, and the strength that lies in overcoming. The months that followed marked a profound transformation in Cora's place within the base and the hearts of those around her. Her story, once whispered with doubt and skepticism, had grown into a quiet legend. But it was not the kind of fame shouted from rooftops or announced with fanfare. Instead, her legacy spread gently, carried on the soft voices of comrades whose lives she had touched, mentored, and inspired. True strength, they learned, was never about physical perfection. It was about resilience, the quiet steel forged in the crucible of loss and hardship. It was about skill honed with discipline, patience, and unyielding determination. Above all, it was about the unbreakable spirit that refuses to yield even when the world casts you aside. One crisp afternoon, beneath a sky painted with the warm hues of a setting sun, the base gathered for a modest ceremony. The flagpole stood tall and proud, its banner fluttering in a gentle breeze. Around it, a circle of comrades formed, soldiers and officers alike, each face reflecting a mixture of respect, admiration, and quiet reverence. The base commander stepped forward, his voice steady and sincere as he spoke. "Today, we honor not only an exceptional marksman, but a symbol of perseverance and courage. Cora has broken barriers and redefined what it means to serve with dignity and strength. Her journey reminds us all that the measure of a warrior is not in what they have lost, but in how they rise after." Cora stood among them, tall and composed. Her black prosthetic arm, once a target of scorn, now gleamed under the fading sunlight, a silent testament to battles fought and overcome. She made no grand gestures, offered no impassioned speech. Her presence alone spoke volumes. The calm dignity of a warrior who had reclaimed her place not through noise, but through unshakable resolve. As the commander finished, a ripple of quiet applause rose from the gathered crowd. It was a sound filled with sincerity and respect, an acknowledgement of her quiet victory over doubt, pain, and invisibility. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Cora lingered for a moment beneath the flag, the sky deepening into shades of orange, purple, and indigo. The weight of her journey settled softly within her, not as a burden, but as a source of quiet pride and strength. Her legacy was no longer something to hide or bear alone. It had become a beacon for those who would come after, a living reminder that dignity, courage, and resilience transcend physical limits and societal expectations. And in that serene moment, with the wind whispering softly through the flag above, Cora knew that her story was far from over. It was merely the beginning of a legacy forged in silence, but destined to echo for generations. The morning after the ceremony dawned with a quiet calm that seemed to embrace the entire base. The usual sounds of footsteps, distant conversations, and the hum of machinery filled the air, but there was something different in the atmosphere, a subtle shift born from respect and understanding. Soldiers moved through their routines with a renewed sense of purpose, their gazes often drifting toward Cora, not with doubt or judgment, but with quiet acknowledgement. Cora herself walked through the bustling corridors with her usual calm presence. There was no fanfare, no elevated status bestowed upon her, just the steady, unwavering strength that had defined her since the beginning. Her black prosthetic arm moved with natural grace as she navigated the familiar spaces of the base, each step measured and deliberate. Eventually, she found herself drawn to a quiet bench overlooking the training grounds, a place she had often sought for solitude and reflection. The early sun was just beginning to rise, casting long, golden shadows across the open field. The sky was painted in soft hues of pink and lavender, a gentle promise of the day to come. Sitting down, Cora reached into the pocket of her jacket and pulled out the faded dog tag that had become more than just a piece of metal. It was a symbol of loss, of legacy, of resilience. Her fingers traced the worn edges thoughtfully, the cool surface grounding her in the present even as her mind wandered through memories. She thought back to the battles fought, not just the physical battles on distant soils, but the internal wars waged in silence. The moments of doubt, pain, and isolation. The losses that left scars unseen but deeply felt. Yet, through it all, there was the unwavering thread of strength that had carried her forward, a strength born not from the absence of weakness, but from the courage to face it. But alongside the weight of the past, there was also hope. Hope for a future that she was quietly helping to shape. One where resilience was recognized, where dignity was reclaimed, and where every soldier, regardless of their scars or stories, could stand proud. A gentle breeze stirred the air, ruffling her hair and carrying with it the faint scent of earth and morning dew. Cora closed her eyes for a moment, allowing the stillness to wash over her. The weight of the past lifted slightly, replaced by a serene resolve, a peaceful strength that transcended victory or recognition. In that stillness, she found something deeper than accomplishment or applause. She found peace. Her journey was far from over. There were still challenges ahead, shadows yet to confront. But in this moment, beneath the vast morning sky, Cora had reclaimed something vital, a quiet power that no one could take away. The dog tag rested gently in her palm as she opened her eyes and gazed out over the training grounds. The sun climbed higher, bathing the field in warm light. The base was waking, alive with possibility. Cora stood slowly, her movements fluid and sure. She tucked the dog tag back into her pocket and adjusted her jacket. As she turned to walk back toward the heart of the base, her silhouette was steady and confident against the rising sun, a living testament to silent strength and the enduring power of resilience. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive tactical stories.